You're good.
Okay, John, thank you.
Dan, where do you want these, huh?
Oh, right here, Patty.
So these are your originals, those are still just clipped and then they're set up.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alrighty. Good morning, everybody. I'm Dan Butler, Chairman of the Wareham Redevelopment Authority. It is Thursday, December 12th, 2024. I very much appreciate Wareham Media recording this meeting digitally for the residents of Wareham and for posterity. John, thank you for being here today. I want to thank Sarah Corbett also for exercising the WRA Emergency Response Plan today. She put up the WRA bat signal around 8:15, and then we executed an extraction operation to get our esteemed select board chair, Ms. Whiteside, out of her home after a tree fell in the vicinity. Two trees. Ms. Whiteside, we're glad you could make it. Thank you for your diligence in trying to get here. She was walking to the meeting from 3 miles away.
Wow, it's actually 5, but
When I stumbled
it's
across
okay.
her. So Judith, thank you for joining us. Hopefully yours is the only home that was impacted by the storm last night. That was quite an event.
It was really something, wasn't it, too?
It was. We have a packed agenda today, and we're very fortunate that we have with us, I believe in Zoom land, Sean Reagan, his colleagues Bob and Lauren from Halverson Tie and Bond. Is it Tie and Bond or Bond and Tie?
Tie and Bond.
Tie and Bond. And as soon as they pop up, we'll let Sean take over. But we've asked Sean and Halverson to give us an update on how the public engagement went on November 18th at Warren's Harborview. We had a great turnout. I think the estimate was 55 people. And I personally felt it was a pretty good event. We got some pretty candid feedback just from what I heard talking to people. And Sean summarized that for us.
Did you call a meeting to order and do a roll call?
Oh,
No.
I called the meeting to order at 9:05, and Mr. Buckland, could you do a roll call?
Eric Sullivan, Sarah Corbett, Dan Butler, Judy Whiteside, and Ken Buckland, all present. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. And we also have present with us today, John Day from Wareham Media recording this event, Connor Alden, esteemed intern for the WRA, and Josh Flaherty. Flaherty. Sorry, Josh. Our land use coordinator for the town.
Yes.
Thank you, Josh. And do I see Jim Yakabachi there in the cheap seats?
Yeah.
Jim, good to see you back there. Let's see. Do we have Halverson ready to go? No? Okay, while we're waiting for Sean and Halverson to pop up, why don't we jump to the next session? Connor, you were going to give us an update on Discover Wareham Presence, and I understand you presented Tuesday night to the select board, is that right?
Yep.
How'd that go?
It was good. You did a good job.
Thanks. Yeah.
It was good.
I really, for the select board, I think my goal was just to make people who are watching it aware that the website actually exists, and then kind of just give a brief update on what we've done so far, and kind of a little bit of insight into the process that the WRA went through from like our initial diagnosis of the website, and we talked about the important metrics that we identified, setting the goals, and so a lot of good thing that I will say for any of you guys that are here that didn't watch it on Tuesday is that the goals that we set back in September or mid-October have pretty much all been met except for the engagement time. So the engagement time for the past 3 months has kind of been lingering around 45 seconds, but our monthly views had gone initially when we set these goals or milestones for us to reach. We were at around 2,000 and change a month, which had gone up in October. We had already reached our goal of 5,000, and then in November, I think it was a little over 7,000, like 7,400 or something like that.
Oh, That's an impressive improvement.
So yeah, I mean, like a lot of these four metrics, the bounce rate, we had met under 50%, which is what we had said, and then page views, I think we also got above 2 or right at 2.
I've got a question. Are you hearing at all from business owners about the site? Have they discover Wareham? or-
Honestly, no. I mean, nobody has filled out the contact form and been like, my business is missing, or here's some information. So, I mean, as far from Wareham businesses, I haven't really gotten any feedback.
Okay.
And that actually was one of the questions or the comments that came up on Tuesday night was, you know, how do you know you have everybody, or how does somebody reach out to you to get included on it?
Yeah, and I mean, I answered it there, but just here too, there's a contact button in bright red on the website, and if anyone has any kind of feedback or needs something or wants something added to the website, then they're welcome to reach out.
And I thought there's a new section now. What is it called?
Yeah, we can talk about that too, the property listings you wanted to talk about,
I
right?
saw that, yeah. I like it. I like the commercial properties listing.
Yeah, but it sounds really labor intensive.
I think
assumed
to
it was,
stay
yeah.
on
Yeah.
top of the commercial ones, it wouldn't be so crazy, but the residential ones, it's a little bit overwhelming. For that reason, I chose not to focus on rental properties, and for residential stuff, I would add houses, and then what I was doing there was going by the most recently posted ones on Zillow, and then maybe I can just track like the top 10 most recently posted residential properties in Wareham.
Now, and how are the commercial sites? How are you finding out about that?
LoopNet, which is another, it's just Zillow for commercial property.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, the residentials, there's enough different websites and resources to find out residential. I don't think it's efficient use of the time.
Yeah.
I wondered about that when I saw that.
And I agree with you. I think it's a waste of time, to be honest with you. I think it should be, it's a redevelopment authority. It's not a rental agency. And there are, as Mr. Sullivan points out, lots of
More than
ways of
enough,
finding the real estate that lasts on the website one day. So why would you even waste your time?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And yeah, based on that, then maybe we just don't even include the residential properties there, and then the whole page is dedicated to commercial property. And then it's built out the same way, like maybe I can show you guys quickly. So I added it to our subheader there. You can see the commercial property.
Yeah.
That was helpful to me when I saw that there and found NetLoop.
Yeah, so like this page, based on the information that you put in, just kind of populates on its own. So like a lot of it is automated, even this whole layout. So like I'm not really dragging and dropping a photo
Oh, that's kind of cool.
or like creating a header like this. I'm really just copying and pasting the information, and then the web page is kind of created on its own. The link is here. I don't even bother like putting in the price or anything like that, just because it takes too much time to get every like minuscule detail. But here you can see it will link right out to the actual
Oh, I
listing
see.
when they're ready. So this is more just like
And you can go right
to get some more
to
eyes on it.
Star.
That makes,
You want more information?
yeah,
Isn't that great?
yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense.
And then I drop in the coordinates on the back end, and this Google Map thing automatically populates with the address.
But this begs the question, now what? I mean,
Yeah, I know.
how are we gonna keep this updated moving forward?
I think it's like relative, it's just as simple as yeah, me staying on top of it. Like I said, there's like only less than 15 commercial properties in Wareham that were ready to be
You don't
leased.
change that often.
Yeah,
Yeah, they
But are you
don't.
talking about the website itself or just this particular section? I think we're,
the website itself,
the
not
website
sure
itself, I
what
think is the
another
question.
source would be for a commercial property. If you guys know, definitely let me know.
No, that's
No,
not what I'm saying. I'm
website,
saying,
our website as a whole, like,
Oh,
now what?
what is the next step for our website as a whole now that we have developed, you have developed more interesting parts? You've populated with good stuff.
yeah.
What's the next step
Mhm,
from the WRA's perspective?
right.
So yeah, I mean, these are all the commercial properties in Wareham right now, according to this website.
I think that's great.
I think, will it say how many visits? 16.
Mhm.
So yeah, and they should all be on the website.
Well, actually, what we'd have to do is get a program going to for outreach on social media
For,
for getting it for attracting people to this site.
oh, okay.
Okay.
You
You mean like going on Facebook and things like that and
Well, you could run Instagram or Facebook ads if you really wanted to.
How
I
much do
just-
those cost?
It depends on the size of the audience, but I've run them before in campaigns, and I could do some research and come back to you guys. If you wanted to run them before the next meeting, we could also do that through email and figure it out.
So
But yeah, it just depends on the audience size and the outreach, the kind of settings that you do.
So the goal for that is, I'm sorry, we're looking at trying to find commercial or send it out to folks.
Get the website known.
Get the website itself known.
Yeah, so it becomes a resource for people because they're bombarded with all kinds of different websites and
Yeah.
information sources that they go to. And what we want to do is get them to go to this one for more than just the listings.
and you said them, our target audience then would be commercial property investors, businesses,
And residents, I would
is
say.
there an easy place to find all those people?
Yeah, you can target those groups in Facebook. The Facebook ad system is like very, very.
Is effective at that?
You can segment-
TikTok.
TikTok, I don't know. I'm not so up to date there.
You gotta add that to your arsenal moving forward
I
though.
know.
I mean, not necessarily for us, but just
I
in
need to put
general.
some focus groups with some 14-year-olds.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
I could be like Belichick and call it tick face or whatever he calls it.
My dad does stuff like that. It's face tweet always.
Yeah.
And Connor, so if you were to try to do something like that, because I think you're hearing that we all think this is a very valuable piece
Mhm.
of Discover Wareham's website. If you were to try to get a campaign underway like Ken just described, if it's as relatively easy as you seem to portray it to be, is that one of the things that you could get underway, trial, do a test trial,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, actually, I
Establish
just
some
need to see if I
metrics,
can run it from
track if we are attracting?
Yeah, you should be
viewership?
able to see where those leads, I guess you can call them, are coming from. Like I said, the Facebook ad system is really robust. So yeah, we can look into that. I just need to see if I can run it from my personal account or if you need a business Facebook account. So I don't know if any of you have a business page that's relevant to the WRA.
I think that's what we should, that's the direction we should go in if we're gonna pursue this, because running it from your personal account, you go away
Yeah.
and there it
Yeah.
goes.
Which is can bring us into the next presentation. It's a good segue.
Okay, I thought so.
But did anyone have any questions from the select board or the properties page or anything else?
No, I like it.
Thank you.
Good addition.
Okay, then I'm going to run through this quickly. And so basically this is our brand book. This isn't final necessarily, but I think that there's a lot of important information there. Just kind of like brand consistency with the website. And something that was a little bit lacking, I would say.
Can I just,
I like that.
my backup one.
Mhm.
I like the darker blue,
Mhm.
the lighter blue,
This one
Is-
on the bottom of the wig.
can I say wishy-washy and not be making a pun? I mean, I like the concept, I just don't like the colors.
Okay, well that's
It's
actually
it's just not,
yeah, then you're at the right presentation.
Yeah.
'Cause we're gonna talk
see,
about
I
that.
like that.
Good. So this is what we're gonna talk about. So quickly, just the logo and the different variation possibilities that we have with that. So right now we're working with this logo and the bigger logo that's on the website, which is just Discover Wareham right next to it. So those are our media assets. And the logo, this is just describing what makes it the logo and what makes it relevant to Wareham. Yeah, you guys can read through that on your own, but like I said, these are the two logo variations that we have. The sailboat on its own and the sailboat with the writing.
Yeah,
It's a
like the
beetle
sailboat.
cat.
Mm,
A beetle cat.
That's a beetle cat.
Okay, thank you.
which are manufactured here in Wareham, right?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
So it's a
great to
good
know, yeah.
logo.
Yeah. So,
Good, then.
there was a purpose behind that particular one,
Okay, perfect. I'll add that to my notes actually. Thanks.
not just a pretty face.
For sure.
So yeah, just talking about the logo, like I said, we have these two right now, but there's also the possibility to add stuff like that, something cute, like a little bit of art in the top homepage, very simple, just for the relevant month or holiday, something like that, just to kind of mix it up and give the site a little bit more character.
I think that's great, actually. That's, you keep the same logo, the same brand
Yeah.
out the whole time, but
That's
gives
neat.
it a little change.
I
And
like that a lot.
Well, you're having too much fun with this project.
yeah, this is a fun one. I definitely like to take a step back and look at different brands and kind of what makes them strong. And I think Wareham and the Discover Wareham site definitely has a lot of strengths too. And I mean, we've talked about that in the past, but yeah.
I also like one for street banners as well too.
Mm.
Mhm.
For what?
Street banners,
Oh, yeah.
but those are vertical, so you'd have
Yeah.
to adjust.
Yeah, but if you guys wanted to get into designing stuff like that, I could definitely create something in the Adobe Illustrator equivalent, which is what these printing companies would be looking for. So yeah, this was the original logo that was on the website already. I think it's a serif font and like another really basic font, and so I've already changed the logo. Mrs. Whiteside, I know you said that this color here on the Massachusetts was a little lackluster, so maybe we can change that. Or have it look more like this.
I don't like the middle one. I
Yeah,
don't
The
like it at
edges.
all. It's wishy-washy.
okay.
It's blah.
Then we'll talk about our color scheme. I think it's on the next slide. But basically what I had changed, and we're gonna talk about this too, is the fonts in the logo. Just to make the fonts consistent with the whole site. So here, like I said, it's a serif font, and I don't know what that font is for Massachusetts, but now everything is uniform, and the whole site is following, I'm just gonna skip over this for now. The whole site is following this typography. So there's like actually a hierarchy to the fonts, so all of the headings should have Source Sans Pro, and the alternative font, so all of the copy and the body, and so the paragraphs and the subheaders should be in this Open Sans. And the reason for me choosing this is not because it's my favorite font, it's because these are Google fonts and the most recent Google fonts, so basically any device that can connect to the internet will also have access to these fonts. So if we stick to this SOP, I guess you can call it, then it pretty much ensures that everyone will be able to see the content on the website all the time. So yeah, here are the reasons that I chose them. Web and print optimized. They work well together. These were recommended by Canva, which is where I made this presentation, and it's like everyone's personal graphic designer now.
Yeah.
So yeah. And we can go back to the color palette. So based on the logo and the site content already, I wanted to get some primary, secondary, and supporting colors for the website, just again, so that we have something uniform to stick to when we're creating content, or maybe in the future when I'm not the only person that's creating content for the website, there's some kind of process to stick to. So the primary colors are the main ones from the logo, which is this indigo blue, and the lighter one, the wishy-washy blue. And the secondary colors are a darker indigo dye, which I've tried to incorporate this into some content, and for me too, this is looking a little off. And another similar mulled wine one, and then these are kind of more basic ones. There's some red in the boat in the logo, gray, this like standard eggshell, black, white, classic supporting colors. but these would be all of the colors for the website, and there shouldn't be any other tones. And when you are building content, you can also just have this open, which is what I've been doing, and then use the color picker tool on any kind of thing, and then go here and get the exact, just click here and get the exact hue that I need.
Mhm.
Where do we have red in there?
Here as a supporting
on the
color.
mast.
Yeah.
It's on the boat.
It's on the
Oh,
map,
sorry.
on the boom,
Yeah, you can see it.
Oh, gotcha, yeah.
we're on the boat.
That's perceptive.
Should that be a cranberry red?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, instead of Wareham Engine 1 red.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can make that a little bit more darker and less of like that standard color. And I can look into a more,
Assertive.
yeah, I was gonna say powerful, so that's good. Look into something more
Something that pops.
solid, I guess you could say, for this wishy-washy blue.
Is there a color named Max Power? So.
So yeah, that's what I came up with. Here, yeah, you can see again just how the font is looking, and then I think I have one more slide with how the content looks, if the glare isn't too bad. So this is what the font hierarchy should look like in practice. This is what the title would look like, literally with the font. Subheader should look like that, and you can notice that it's the space between the letters is a little bit wider. And it just kind of creates a different feel, makes everything a little bit more cohesive. And then this is lorem ipsum for what the paragraph would look like. And this is that in practice. So this is actually a subheader. This would be the main header, and then all of the paragraph info.
So by doing this, you're less likely to exhaust the viewer, is that?
Well, yeah, it's consistency. So anyone, again, that has like some kind of branding or marketing experience can go in and see like, okay, this is a consistent brand, like people know what they're doing, and there's actually some kind of like concerted effort towards this. On one end, it's like cosmetic, and on the other side, it's also technical because, like I said, these are Google supported fonts, and they're going to be picked up easier by the search engine. So hopefully it would have performance there if anyone's looking for something that would come up on the website, and that it actually shows up on devices, because not all devices have every possible font.
So Google searches by color as well?
No, it's by the font style. And
Okay.
so if you're also following, it matters what you select as your header. So when you're creating content, it will say, I think there's like 4 or 5 headers, but the header 1 is what the Google search prioritizes, and then it goes from there. So whatever you have in your header 1 is like what's more likely to pop up in a Google search. So if I search public meeting on waterfront in Wareham, it's more likely that I'm coming to the Discover Wareham website than if I search something from like the paragraph that like in the middle it says, I don't know, access to Wareham waterfront and economic growth or something like that. But I would be way more likely to get this article if I search the header.
But also when you have design consistency, then that can sort of fade into the background from the user experience and they can pay attention to the content
Yeah,
rather
yeah,
than be
that's the
distracted
idea.
by
That
constantly
not
changing.
everyone is saying how beautiful it is, but that everything kind of flows well together.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, I mean, that's everything. And like I said, I'll continue to build on this as we get more procedures in place.
So Connor, you need from us just the feedback you got this morning, is there anything else?
Yeah, like the feedback, if you think one of the colors is weak, is great feedback, honestly. And yeah, just looking to get feedback from you guys. I don't think that there's anything to necessarily vote on.
I think Sarah's point about cranberry color.
Yeah,
There are
That's
two
Derek.
things that Wareham really has going for it that not everybody else does.
Mhm.
One is the cranberry industry and one is the access to water.
And we're the Cranberry Coast, that's my own personal branding.
So I kind of, you know, you don't have red sails except at sunset, but
Mhm.
you know, I would try and integrate that a little bit more.
yeah, we can definitely work it in.
Well,
You were the only one who got it.
No, the
Cranberry
warships
instead of
had
the
the in the 1800s had the red decks for during the
And the
battles,
junks have red
so.
sails, but
Okay, any other questions for Connor, any feedback
So I-
regarding the branding?
no,
particular?
but the question comes back to what, are we pursuing having this as being one of our marketing tools? We come back to that very, very basic question,
Mhm.
which is,
I think, if we continue to see the traffic rise and if we pursue this Facebook, Instagram ads
Yeah,
and
I
see
think
what
that
that does
might
for
be
us.
a pretty logical next step because I have noticed that the viewership has done well over the past 3 months, but also I would say in like this most recent 30-day rolling period, it's kind of plateaued a little bit around 300 viewers. So like in the select board meeting, like I said, when I started, it was around 100, and we slowly started adding more, and then it's like 200 a day, and now we're right around 300 views a day, and it's been pretty stagnant.
What would be our expectations for success?
So I think we set those kind of milestones already, and now I need to go back, kind of also like I said in the select board meeting, I need to go back and set some new
Adjust
milestones and make sure that we keep on meeting them.
Okay.
So I think it took us 3 months to do this one more or less, so I can just set another like short-term goals again based on the same metrics. We just stick to our guns. It's just setting the goalposts a little further.
Yeah, and Connor, I think you've hit on something that's essential to what we're trying to achieve here at the WRA when it comes to marketing the town. When you added the commercial properties piece to the website, and as Ken pointed out, if we can burn through the clutter that all potential investors, developers have to weed through every day, so they can find us, they can discover Wareham and zoom right in. Then a relevant metric is, did you increase that traffic from that specific cohort of target audience that we're looking at? And then did some of these properties suddenly get snapped up,
Yeah.
leased, bought? Then you would have some serious tangible impact on redevelopment here in town that we could tie back to the Discover Wareham website.
And I think it's good to get the feedback from you guys that the residential stuff isn't so relevant, because now when I remove the residential stuff, I can just stay on top of the commercial stuff. So like these 15 properties, I'll notice when one of them sells, I can reach out to the realtor and say, XYZ, noticed that this sold. Did you know if the person that went in there or who's leasing from you now, like how they heard about it? So yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple things like future businesses as well, like you've been seeing around the Krabby Coffee coming to Onset. What's that? They're doing a nice job reaching out ahead of time, stuff. But that'd be something interesting to add, or some of the other ones popping up along in town.
Yeah, I can look into it. So it should be 53 Marion Road, right? 54. Okay. Yeah, I feel like there's one more thing I wanted to say, but I forgot.
I have a couple of questions, Connor. I did notice that when I go to Discover Wareham on the iOS operating system, I still can't see the events tab. And I know I can find it when I go to Chrome, but even then it's buried.
In your browser or in
browser.
your iOS on Chrome?
In my iOS browser or my Chrome.
On your phone.
On your phone.
Oh no, on my iPad,
Oh, on your iPad.
Oh.
Okay. Maybe
which I'm thinking is probably close to what
the
most people would
events
see.
tab is the last one all the way to the right.
Yeah, see, I don't get that.
So maybe if we shorten that up, it makes it more functional for
you don't get what
mobile.
part? You don't get the.
But I can look into
That
it.
might
So
be
instead of
top.
like, I
Yeah,
would just take out
I get
one of
everything
these.
except that. And that events is down on the side, left-hand side.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Okay.
I see what you're saying.
So I think I just need to make the header shorter. So maybe get rid of some of these quick links, one of these ones, and then or the
And
font size I could.
and we'd spoken before about the campaign overview.
Yeah.
We don't really need that tab.
Mhm.
I mean, we can have that buried in there somewhere else, under
And
about.
rename it.
You
Even though Judy hates the slogan, it's the slogan we have. You should rename it Discover Wareham, or it's better before the bridges actually is what that page is about.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was the original pre-COVID campaign.
Mhm.
Which launched and created COVID apparently.
So that's why. I think it should
And-
be Welcome to the Cranberry Coast, but that's another project.
What do you call
Cranberry Coast, that's what we
it?
are.
Oh. And let's see. Anything else for Connor today? Connor, do you need anything else from us, or Ken, do you need anything from us regarding where you're going? I think I'm really pleased with where you and Connor have taken this. I think it's been money well spent so far.
Oh, Jesus, my gosh. Apparently I need a doctor's appointment. Not mental yet.
And I would just ask that you keep it up and keep surprising us, Connor, with the improvements you've made to the website, and keep meeting and exceeding those metrics that you've set and raise the metrics. And I'm very curious to see what happens when the commercial properties piece of this website is discovered
Mhm.
by the relevant audience.
Yeah, and I think that's like a lot of what we talked about when we were deciding whether or not to even continue dedicating effort to the website. Was our goal is to make it a tool and a resource for people more so than, I don't know, just capturing eyeballs for ads that we don't have on the website. So it really needs to be something that people are using, especially business owners. So I think that the commercial property thing is a step in the right direction.
Okay, Connor, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you
a good
all.
presentation.
I'm not sure if I see anyone in there.
Let's see, John, any luck getting Sean Reagan and Halverson Ty and Bond up on Zoom? I see 2 attendees.
We're getting the number, but they're not showing up on the list for some odd reason.
Let me see,
Let
3
me see if I
participants.
can fix something on my end.
That might have been Sean trying to call.
They said they raised their hand to be let
Right,
in.
but their names aren't coming up specifically, so I think something's up with Zoom. Give me one moment and I will see if I can get something working.
I just got a call, Ken, from a 508 number 9577. Is that Sean by any chance?
I don't know.
Could be my health clinician calling you.
Have you seen Eric Sullivan? Okay, well, John works through the technical challenges we have here right now. What do we got updates? Ms. Corbett, when I sent the draft agenda around, suggested that it'd be good to get some updates on several issues that we touched on before, but really haven't dug into a little bit. Ken, I know you've been having some meetings, or you had a meeting with the master developer. Is that recent? Or they were
Well, I've
hoping to have a
been
meeting?
in contact by phone with him on a regular basis.
Any
yeah.
update on Tremont Nail, the master developer, their plans, timetables?
Yeah, their plan is to coordinate it with the removal of the dam, the Parker Mill Pond Dam, because that allows the main building to dry out.
Right.
Where does that project stand?
That project is in preliminary permitting, preliminary design.
Yeah, so I mean, by saying permitting, people think we have the funds to do it and stuff. We don't. So that's.
No, yeah, right.
So,
No funding yet
yeah,
for that.
the design permitting stage to see what it would take, and then then it's going out for grants thereafter. So there's several years. What I'd like to see is if the agreement with the master developer, did we have any performance standards? Because I don't know if originally there was a caveat about the dam on it, which I don't.
No, there wasn't
There
originally.
Right,
Yeah.
so my thought is if that's a major hang up for them and we're several years out from the dam being taken care of, we might need to rescind our relationship and look for another one that maybe will start without worrying about the dam.
That's possible, yeah, redo the RFP and
You know, so that's what I'm just thinking on it. You know, it's right now it's the space is going. Although I know we've been working on the municipal side, still trying to fix stuff within the building, including the seepage and things like that. So it's still a cost and liability to the town while they're sitting back waiting for us to do the work.
Right.
So I don't appreciate that. I think we need to move forward on something that
Yeah, the other thing-
involves some sort of movement or get off the pot.
The other thing they're doing is also looking at purchasing other property around the area, since not all the properties, like the company store is not part of our holdings. It's separate, it's private held.
Has the master developer actually purchased additional property around the location?
No, still in negotiation on that at this point, trying to negotiate sale, purchase of land.
But that runs the risk of having a bunch of inactive properties waiting on the dam.
That's right.
Right.
So that's concerning.
From a,
Do we have an
From
actual
select-
contract with the master developer?
Yes, we do.
What does it require of them?
Redevelopment within a certain time frame.
What's that time frame?
It's passed already.
So we don't even need to rescind it.
well,
We-
I'm,
We would want to clear, so there's no cloud on the property
Right.
whatsoever.
and
Well, yeah, it sounds like the master developer has a claim on the property now that we've allowed them to get, that they're not delivering on.
That-
We're not getting any benefit from it.
I really detest empty buildings. And this property was purchased for the right reasons, has cost much more money than we thought it would. And I agree with Derek that we should not be, Derek who's in charge of town properties, even though it may not be town property. We should be trying to make the best use of our assets, and having it sit there doing nothing is not a good use.
If they were doing some things like, little food truck festivals or something, anything to give the property some life, I'd be okay with it, but it's just there and it's always, and I get it, but it's always like, oh, we need this next milestone, and then once that happens, it feels like the goal line's getting moved further and further down.
And it seems like some of the buildings on the property, like the freight building, why can't that be redeveloped now? That's not dependent necessarily on Parker Mill Dam being removed. Or the steel building, there might be more that can be done on that piece of the property.
So I think we need to direct Derek and Ken to go back to the drawing board and see where we are and come back with a suggestion or plan.
That's legitimate, yeah.
And I think we ought to consider two options as you're doing that, Derek and Ken. One is the town owns Tremont Nail Factory. Do you want to give it to the redevelopment authority to redevelop, which is what redevelopment authorities exist to do? Or does the town want to just sell the property altogether? Accept the fact that we bought a white elephant, sell it to somebody that will actually want to develop it because they'll have skin in the game if they buy it.
In order, well,
You gotta remember, there's over $3 million worth of Community Preservation Act funding put into it, so
How does that encumber the property?
it encumbers it with certain restrictions, and I'd have to look into it.
To be historic, yeah.
I also don't know about selling properties that have been acquired through community preservation, what that does, so, I don't think it's as easy as saying, yep, we're done with it. I think
But
that might be our special person for the rest of our lives, so,
That would be a what?
special person for the rest of our lives,
Special person?
yeah, our special little thing,
so let's just move it back to the two guys. That's okay with you.
But I do think that's worth exploring. As you just pointed out, Derek, that there are probably some impediments to selling the property outright, but that doesn't mean it can't be sold.
Yeah, I don't think
it's figure out how to surmount those impediments.
that would be the select board looking into that, not us,
So,
so.
yeah, let's just,
And I don't know about I'll be blunt, we can look into it, again, the efficiency use of our assets and time is our workers' time too, so.
You made the point, though, that we've sunk additional money year after year after year into that property. It's non-performing. It's costing the town money. It's not doing a thing for the town.
It's not cost us since we had the company that went into the steel metal building, but they have gone belly up. So right now, out of it, we've had the steel metal building reskinned by one company, just under $300,000 of value added to the property. And these folks, I think, put in cash about 80 to 90,000, which offset the costs of operating it. But that's going to disappear real quick.
Right.
So it's we have a duty to maintain that property. So the idea of disposing of it is gonna be really difficult because I don't think the select board could dispose of it. I think it's a town meeting action.
Oh, I'm sure it is, yeah.
So but I think
But it's something the town ought to contemplate. You know, we bought a multi-million-dollar property that created a big divot in town finances, I presume, and it hasn't paid off like we anticipated at the time.
Yeah, the number
It
one
might be
issue
time to
was
cut.
not securing a long-term lease when they purchased it. When the town purchased it, and I don't know, when it was, 2004 or something like that? The thought was Acorn at the time, or the kind of Tremont Nail Company, was going to lease it back, which would then pay for the bonding and such. When they did the purchase and sales, they did not secure a long-term lease. So within a year, Acorn said, thanks for playing, we're out of here. You know, so now there's all different ways to utilize that building, but there's other buildings along there. But even if the dam goes away, that's my concern. You now have a property that's in the floodplain. So I'm trying to figure out the only way to really make that work is how would you sell that? Who would buy that for a market price? You'd have to subsidize the whole thing. So, I mean, is the thought process get rid of it for $1 and then are we paying back, community preservation funds or something like that? It's, I think it's, like I said, I think we're stuck with that good, bad, or indifferent. So the idea should be, well, if we can get, the thought was master developers in there, for them not having any sort of a acquisition price. I know the ones we brought in there had some big ideas, but also had some other impediments from their own business dealings that, and once those were unclouded, it was supposed to be, this is the next step. Once that happened, we were told, again, it was like Lucy pulling the ball away from Charlie Brown. It was, now we're worried about the dam. So it's, what should be happening is if we're having this process of the dam removal, concurrently their plan to redevelop it should be going on. If that activity's not happening, that means we don't have a partner.
That's an incentive for a payment of grant money for taking the dam down.
Correct. We're trying to say, all right, we've got this place. What are you gonna do with it? Well, we have these guys that say once the dam's taken care of, once we put this money in, then they're going to do something.
And I can understand their position, they don't wanna dump money into it if it's gonna be premature from their standpoint as investors. And we do have a great property there, a building, that steel building, that's probably something we ought to put on Discover Wareham's website. And if we have a non-paying tenant right now that hasn't paid rent in how long, 6 months or longer?
Yeah, I think that's going to be done. We're done with them, is the way it works.
Right.
So
we gotta get that up on the website.
well, no, because right now we're going to utilize it for seasonally for storing our seasonal equipment. Which rather than us paying somebody else to do it, we'll do it in there. It
Okay.
actually saves us some dough.
Okay, so the town's getting.
Pollution, police, harbor master, and others. So
Okay,
it's
so that saves money, so,
Yeah.
okay.
so
Ken,
that's
if
where
you-
we get a benefit of the utilization of that steel metal building.
So if we could, Ken, take Ms. Whiteside's suggestion and look at what the options might be going forward regarding master developer. Do we rescind that agreement? Do we issue another RFP, and if you can make a recommendation to us, we can at least support it in our effort to communicate with the select board that we think that property is still derelict and it needs to change.
I would caution you that we are coming into the busiest time of the year. We have a special town meeting. We have a whole lot of time-sensitive issues on our plate, our being our management team as well as our boards and committees. So I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying don't expect it next meeting because it ain't gonna happen. It just plain isn't going to. And there needs to be understanding from our new board members who probably don't have the history of the acquisition. There's a whole bunch that needs to go into this, and I don't want you to, or anybody to think that it's gonna happen overnight.
Well said. And Sarah, I appreciate you bringing that up. Does that satisfy your
Yeah.
desire for an update?
Yes, thank you.
Um,
We seem to have our,
Yeah, we do have Halverson Tie and Bond there. I see Sean Reagan himself. Sean, how are you? Well, thank you for joining. Lauren, nice to see you. And I see Bob
Hi.
Cleary. Bob unavailable today.
Bob is unavailable today.
That's okay. That's okay. Tell him we miss him.
I'll pass it along. Thank you. Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here. Sorry, we tried desperately to wave our hands electronically that we were here. We sent carrier pigeons that are like just not even close to you guys yet that we were holding in the wings, but I'm glad we're able to join you. So we have a presentation ready to give you an update on where we are in the project. I know that many of you attended, I think all of you, if my facial recognition pays off, attended a public meeting the other week. So my question is, how much time do you want to allocate to our presentation and discussion? And that'll tailor how into the weeds we go.
We'll give you the time you need if we have Zoom time. Do you know, John, are we limited in how much Zoom time we have with this connection? Or unlimited? Sean, take all the time you need. This is an important update.
Okay, that's fine. I'm gonna share screen. We all see the Wareham Coastal Facilities slide?
Yep.
Excellent. So I'll try to gauge what feels right and what is appropriate, and feel free to Dan and Ken, as you've been more in the trenches with us, if there are things that you want us to focus more on in this update, we can certainly do that. So first, introductions. So I've met many of you at that public meeting. I introduced myself. So Sean Reagan, Senior Landscape Architect with Halverson Tie and Bond. I'm joined by my colleague Lauren Butch. She's a landscape architect as well. Today's discussion is going to focus on 5 basic components. We want to just present to you our analysis of the site opportunities and constraints that are informing our concept design, some guiding ideas and inspiration that we've used and established to guide us through the process, our basic conceptual approaches, some summary to the public meeting that we had, and the online survey, which we've received pretty robust feedback so far, which has been terrific, and talk about next steps in our process. So a quick snapshot of where we are. We have completed our initial phase, which these phases were established in the initial RFP scope that was written, that were generally following. The phase 1 is analysis of the existing conditions. We've had a number of stakeholder and focus group meetings in that phase. We also performed some investigations such as the bathymetric survey work, which was surveying the bottom of the river and its elevations to understand the opportunities of where to optimally place a fishing pier and where not to. We performed some drone photography, which we've been using as a basis for our concept studies. That was done in May. And so now we're in the public outreach. We're really finishing our public outreach phase and turning into these next 2 phases of kind of refining our concept design and testing the feasibility of that design against permitting agencies, against a cost analysis, and other considerations. Generally, we intend to be complete with this project no later than, Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there was a cutoff date in July, if I'm not mistaken, it's part of the grant funding.
30 June?
30 June, yeah.
30 June. So that's our very tail end that we're working hard to stay in front of. We've had some delays over the past several months in terms of not receiving feedback from some, the DOT, for instance, and others. But we're looking to play catch up on those aspects, and I'll talk about that shortly. So broad brush, very high level, what this project is about, and sorry to be preaching to the choir, you all set up this project, you commissioned this project, we're here because you decided to make it happen with the grant funding. But the basic components that we've been telling others is that we've got three basic components. We have our shoreline, which offers amenity, which offers recreation opportunity. We have a railroad that is a bit of an impediment, safety and psychological barrier. And we have the Wareham Village that we understand is really the driver of this project in terms of it being an economic revitalization project or an extension of the Wareham Redevelopment Authority's mission, and bringing foot traffic to the downtown, enhancing the downtown. And one of the basic questions, besides creating the actual amenity of the shoreline, is where do we cross, how best to interconnect this to Wareham Village in a way that leverages the assets and strengths of Wareham Village and builds in a way that's consistent with the goals of your organization. So we looked at several different critical success factors that we thought were important. We sort of grouped them into three considerations. One, and our first, is the shoreline. And for that analysis, we looked at what would be the optimal fishing location. And there may not be it may be a zone, which I'll show you, it's sort of a zone that's preferred. We base this analysis on our internal team of surveyors went out and performed a bathymetric survey of about 2,000 linear feet and about 250 feet away from the shore. All of these very small little dots are survey points that they took. They extracted that information, and we developed the contouring of the river, which is as shown. And so generally, we're at a 3-foot elevation on the left-hand side or the west side of the river, and that drops to the deepest point of about 8 feet on the right. Deepest relatively speaking, before getting to the deeper elevations that are by the bridge. So that was informing to the extent that we thought that there was sort of a preferred window of locating a fishing pier that would give a better range of depths, more fish habitat. And that's generally this area here. And it's more or less coinciding with the concentrated area and the historic part of downtown. Here's the old station right here. And here's some of the buildings that are indicated for redevelopment just to the right. Our next critical success factor was the actual railroad crossing. As I said, the major considerations here are safety as well as visibility. So we want it to be something that people feel safe crossing, but it's also visible enough that it's going to be used and is going to be convenient. This consideration is still ongoing. We're still trying to have coordination with the DOT, and I think we can get into that more in terms of our next steps at the end of this presentation. Generally, we started with an assumption that we should be locating the crossing not in direct adjacency with any of the structures that would prevent railroad operators from seeing people pass. So in the zones between these, so between the old station and between the new station, for example. Our next and final critical success factor is all the factors that are relevant to Wareham Village. So this becomes a multi-layered consideration. Is it proximate to parking? Is it visible and prominent? How is it activating the downtown? So we first looked at parking. We used the takeaways from the 2014 Nelson Nygaard parking study that were performed. This is a summary of the takeaways on that parking assessment. And we understand that additional parking studies are being performed right now, as informed by Ken and Dan. But in 2014, as indicated, multiple different types of parking throughout the downtown. The type of parking that would be available to people using the coastal recreation are highlighted here. Throughout downtown, there's 318 public spaces. Those that would be proximate to the shoreline include 69 spaces at the actual new railroad station, and then the single loaded and double loaded parking aisle bays, along Merchants Way. Those would be perceived to be the most convenient depending upon where we put it. And then obviously we have locations across Main Street. Psychologically, I think that's a little bit of a leap for people to think that that's convenient, but we wanted to include it. That study also identified a few potential shared parking uses. I don't think those have been realized, but we're putting them here in magenta as potential ads. Excuse me. Our next consideration was, if we're going to construct a crossing and construct a fishing pier, we want it to be highlighted. We want it to be at least visible, if not prominent, a prominent feature of the downtown. And so looking at this, there are 3 view sheds currently from Main Street. If one was driving down Main Street or walking down Main Street, 3 sort of portals, if you will. On the right, there's a number of this is a very porous opening, as you know, in terms of lots of openings, but certainly along this drive here was somewhat more open and a lot of view shed. The one here towards the old station, yes, partially obstructed by old station, but once you see a glimpse of a crossing or fishing pier, I think that you can infer what's beyond. And then this drive entry into the parking was probably the one of the most unobstructed locations that we inferred. And then the last consideration is, how could this project help activate the downtown in a way that anticipates future development? So we took a look at your very recent 2023 redevelopment study performed by Emily Innes, and just compiled the summary of those takeaways here, and the identification of particularly letter A here, the dedicated pedestrian plaza that we understand is in the process of being realized in terms of grant money actually being used on a consultant to get to the next stage to possibly design this and advance that concept. Just to the right of it, the potential acquisition of these 2 buildings here. These areas were identified as some of the, in the public feedback, were identified with some of the least inviting areas, is particularly at the back of these buildings. The least inviting area along Merchants Way. Sponge Park, identified as phase 2 of the redevelopment plan. The anticipated mixed use in this zone. And then at the very end, a possible transit-oriented development in front of the train station. So those are some considerations that would be worth bearing as we look at the project. And pardon the layered complexity here, but we tried to distill out our takeaways from all of these considerations and highlight what appeared to be, on face value, 2 candidates for a crossing and fishing pier location. And the reason we group crossing and fishing pier together is they're 2 separate parts of the project. Do they need to be closely wed together? Not technically. We can have a fishing pier 100 feet down or 200 feet down for the crossing. We just think that in terms of convenience and proximity of people committing to walking across the train track, seeing the fishing pier, and using it to get down to the water, it's just that much more psychologically closer to people if the two are closely aligned. And we're going to show you some concepts that highlight this left-hand location. So we identified these two. The one on the left appeared to be the most advantageous in terms of building on some of the density that you currently have in the town, and the most open. So I'll also, just as a side note, mention that in our discussions and evaluations, we used these 6 ideas, these principles, as reminders of ourselves of what was important on this project as we located things and developed initial concepts. And those were, connectivity both to the water's edge and amongst different parts of the downtown. Safety cannot be underscored given the railroad and recent events. The recreation, which is the core of this project. Economic redevelopment, which is the driver of this project. Cohesive pedestrian experience, we see that as very much the recipe to make this a differentiating project, something that people will really want to visit and see. And then environmental stewardship, I think there'll be a lot of agreement there that whatever we do, we need to be aware and cognizant of how it impacts the environment, both the ecology, but also anticipation of, sea level changes and things of that nature. So multi-layered there. So we want to turn the page to some inspiration that we found. And some of these we started the project with, some of these were actually recently brought to our attention as part of the public engagement. We had discussions with people where they mentioned places like Stewart, Florida, that had places that were very similar to what we were trying to achieve. And we looked them up and thought, wow, that is very much in line with the vision here. We should include that as an example. But in terms of the fishing pier and the boardwalk, 3 came to mind. In Nantucket, there is a boardwalk feature that has plantings that are interspersed in it over the water's edge, that our internal coastal team actually worked on. Stewart, Florida, it's a boardwalk system that's very reminiscent of the aspects of the coastal pathway that we think is inherent in this project. And then on the Chicago riverfront, this is one of 2 examples of that project in which getting people down, in this case, getting people down to the water's edge for the purpose of kayak, what it could actually look like in terms of people's pedestrian experience. Excuse me. 3 more. Salem Willows Park Pier is a recent pier that was constructed that we thought was really relevant, and there's several others like this in the region. Mattapoisett Rail Trail, referenced both early in the project and a number of times during the public engagement phase as being a worthwhile inspiration of a rail trail that's constructed on a boardwalk that is inviting, encourage mobility, encourages a range of uses, both walking and biking. And then we included a lot of images in the public engagement from this project, which we thought has a lot of appeal visually in terms of pedestrian experience. This is that Chicago riverfront project. So we just wanted to paint a picture of the things that brought us inspiration, but then refocus that into how does it translate into our particular project. As I said, we previously identified this drive and the crossing here as a potential location for the pedestrian crossing. And so early on, we developed this just high-level concept of how that could look. Excuse me, I don't think I'm drinking enough. Locating a fishing pier and a kayak launch, very similar to this type of structure. Now, with a single crossing, it lent itself to certainly achieving something at the very closely associated, proximate to that crossing. But we wanted to take more advantage of the shoreline, and give people a destination where there might otherwise be no pathway or a pathway to a dead end that might not be very inviting. So we're seeing that as potentially being an overlook, some sort of destination that will give people motivation to get to use the full portion of it. The other option would be, as we have previously discussed, to incorporate a second crossing and do some sort of loop, which we're still exploring and looking at. And then the other consideration that we looked at through the summer with the team was Merchants Way in general. The public engagement meeting highlighted the very obvious, low-hanging fruit improvements that could be made to Merchants Way, making it a more attractive pedestrian experience. And so we visualize what, just an idea of what, sort of enhancements could be made to Merchants Way. We understand your other consultant is taking a look at this type of exercise, but we see these improvements as being wedded very much to the success of this project. And so tying the two together in terms of what's happening with the parking and crossings and with the shoreline, we think it will be important. But we think treating Merchants Way less as a parking, less as a back of house, and more as a parallel downtown street, paralleling Main Street, is the right approach. Meaning, look at streetscape improvements that may turn the parking 90 degrees to give more space to a pedestrian zone in front of the buildings. Meaning, consolidate the dumpsters that are in some of these areas, distributed. In some of these areas, they're concentrated, but they don't have screens. Consolidate them into screened areas. Also meaning, make a very clear route and zone of pedestrian. We highlighted that here in orange, where it's just very evident where people are invited to walk and that it's centered around people walking. And incorporating the old station as some sort of feature. The use of it's always a question, but somehow wedding it to this overall concept. So I covered a lot of ground. I covered many months of discussions and work in, about, I don't know how many minutes, 10, 15 minutes. It brought us to the point of diving deeper into this concept of saying, okay, well, if the crossing is here, and we wanted to go to our first public meeting with a little bit more refined design for people to respond to. And so this was one of the images that we used, as many of you know. If it is here, what does it tangibly look like and feel like to experience it? So let's talk about the shoreline quickly. We know that the shoreline, given its very narrow dimension and very constrained spatial relationships and elevations, we believe that any sort of coastal pathway is going to need to be elevated above that actual zone. We're going to need to minimally disturb the vegetation. We're going to need to be above a reasonable level of the water as it rises. And to do that, we think that we're above the ground plane. We're not just doing a asphalt pathway or bituminous pathway. We're elevating it. And that experience becomes tied into a more extended fishing pier. Now, this is an idea of taking a fishing pier and trying to think of it not just as a fishing amenity, though that is the primary goal here, but animating it with seating with a small canopy that will give shade and encourage people to stay in this area. And then using it as a launching pad for the kayak launch itself. So this is where we started, and we heard good things and also some critique of this idea in terms of some people said, well, it'd be better if, for instance, this kayak launch were its access point were closer to the shore, so people didn't have to walk down and make the 90-degree turn with a kayak or canoe. And I think we'll be looking to make those changes. Another one we heard was make it so that people can get down off of the boardwalk onto the water's edge to do more shell-based fishing and activities there. Allow people to really be on the shore, not just up and elevated. And we heard that loud and clear. This is another view of that same concept and its relationship to the water's edge and to the shore. A lot of this vegetation exists today, but we ideally be looking to enhance it and make it more robust in terms of plantings that give a sense of immersion in the shoreline and not necessarily something that you feel like you're on the railroad tracks of. And then this is why we're seeing value in aligning the crossing with the fishing pier itself. There's sort of this wow moment if you locate it in a visible and prominent location in which you're locating all the assets, the main assets, into the view shed, in which give people the incentive to come, to visit, to discover. People will see this amenity perhaps regardless, but it puts it together in a way that wants to bring them forward. So it gave us some excitement about the project. Most recently, a few weeks ago, I saw all of you at the public meeting number 1. We called it our listen session. We wanted to go to that meeting with some ideas for people to respond to, but not necessarily final solutions for people to learn about the outcomes of this project. That will be the next meeting. And we also did an online survey. And so those two efforts represented 148 public engagement touch points, different interactions with individuals, some of which were the same. Some people took the online survey and showed up, but we had 148 instances of people engaging with the project. What we heard, the feedback that we asked in the survey and also the discussion we heard in our own discussions, 3 different categories: recreation, safety and access, and Wareham Village. They were distributed amongst 9 subtopics: recreation, access to water, water views, all closely associated, environment, lighting, fencing, Wareham Village station reuse seemed to be a recurring enough theme to mention here. Merchants Way buildings and dumpsters, also recurring enough to highlight here. The people who participated in this online survey indicated what street they are, and so we correlated that on this map approximately, and we can see that it's generally concentrated around Wareham Village, and then distributed amongst the town beyond that with a smaller proportion. But we had 93 survey responses. 84 of them were Wareham residents. Interestingly, the demographics on the respondents was primarily in the 60-year-old to 79-year-old age bracket, much less so in the younger ages. Smaller household sizes for those respondents, generally two in those households, and the ethnicity primarily white, very small proportion Asian or Hispanic. We did offer a Portuguese translation, and of the 93 responses, no one opted to take the Portuguese translation, which I thought was good feedback in terms of who's looking at this, and maybe good feedback for how we go about this if we did another exercise of who we're reaching and make sure we're getting into those communities. And then our public meeting, our lesson session, we had over 55 attendees. I'd call it a successful night of learning more about what people think. As you know, we had 4 different stations set up and allowed people to put sticky notes and converse. And the actual handwritten sticky notes, we had 94 different ones, which we compiled and used that as a basis for finding the themes and takeaways from them that I've presented thus far. Those 3 categories I talked about, this is our first category. And so I'm going to present you the findings both from the online survey and from the public meeting. Of the respondents to that online survey, most, 89 as compared to 3, participate in some sort of recreational activity. Most of those, over 80, tended to indicate walking as their recreation, followed by biking or kayaking. Sizable portions for those, smaller portion on canoeing, and fishing was a little less than half. Where in the surrounding region do you go for such activities? Wareham was indicated, Mattapoisett, Onset, Buzzards in general, the canal, and that was revealing. On average, how often do you use those facilities? In red, more than once a week, and then this bluer color 2 to 3 times per month. So frequent users, people are active. The people responding to this are very active. And how far do you travel? Less than 5 minutes is in red. The takeaway here is people generally travel more than 5 minutes to their destinations. And a lot of the respondents for this project are within 5 minutes of Wareham Village. So there's sort of that realization of they're currently driving farther to get to these activities. This would be a more proximate offering to them. And how would you use it? It's this question, but said in another way. And it correlated with the same answer. Generally, people would gravitate towards walking, perhaps biking or kayaking. And then the takeaways from our public meeting on right here, these were snippets of our boards, and we grabbed some of the comments that we heard that we thought represented some sort of theme, but I'll share with you the takeaways. Respondents regularly and frequently participate in recreation activities, particularly walking and biking. I said this, but I'll underscore it here. As well as the majority of respondents travel more than 5 minutes to access those recreational facilities, but this project is within a 5-minute drive of those majority of people who attended. There's generally strong support for creating a waterfront recreation amenity in Wareham Village. And there is also strong interest in more passive recreation beyond the walking and the biking, but there's a lot of interest in picnicking and nature viewing and things like that. Not a very confrontational topic in general, but recreation, get a lot of excitement around that. Now we introduce more of the kind of opinion-based questions. Where should the crossing be? What kind of fencing do you like? This is an obvious statement. Respondents generally view the parking and the railroad as barriers to accessing the shoreline. When we ask them just broad brush questions, what do you see as the barriers? Those are it. The majority of respondents favor a crossing proximate to the old station. These are the dots that were indicated in the meeting. They were transposed onto the slide. And so we see more in this zone with a couple isolated further to the west. And generally, the majority of respondents favor a more contemporary fence design. We gave these 6 options. Chain link received no votes. It was also a little sticky note. This fence is hideous. Not a lot of support there. More aluminum rail, which is definitely a step up. Some people voted for that. More decorative fence, more artistic storytelling was 4 votes. A bollard with a chain was 8, but the more contemporary design, this example that we gave from the Chicago riverfront, received 20 votes. And people wrote in, which I thought was very good to keep in mind, leave the bottom small enough for small animals to pass through. And another, use cable rail, much better for visibility. And then our third category, Merchants Way and Main Street. This was very informing in terms of why people come. What typically brings you to Wareham Village? The restaurants. And what's your most frequent destination? Mariachis is probably the most popular destination for any tenant in downtown. There was various different spellings of that name or Mexican restaurant in the answers. And obviously the post office was another one. The cafe was also a very notable destination. And any issues or concerns the project should consider. The same themes reemerged: parking, access. Homelessness was the first time this topic came up in the public feedback, but it was noted a number of times. That the size of the text indicates the number of times it was mentioned as a response. And so for our third and final category, the takeaways here, general consensus that the shoreline is a visual and recreation asset, but that Merchants Way needs to be improved. Pedestrian lighting and dumpster organization was mentioned by several as immediate change that could happen. The new train platform, the old station were the most inviting areas. So those are in blue on right. These are the sticky notes that people put down. Locations that are most inviting, and the least inviting in red were primarily around Sam's Gas, and then behind the areas indicated for redevelopment, just to the right of the old station. Mariachis, Cafe Sol, and the post office are the most frequent destinations. So hats off to them. And the desire for easy parking, it's an interesting conundrum. The 2014 study indicated that even during peak hours, there is a generous amount of parking capacity in downtown. But I think the thing we realized once we kind of correlated, well, there are relatively few very popular destinations, and that when people go, they're looking to park there. I think that compounds a parking perception problem that, well, when I want to eat dinner at Mariachi's, I can't get near Mariachi's. I have to park much further, even though there is adequate parking. So I think that skews the perception somewhat and is notable for that reason. So before jumping into next steps, which we've highlighted here as our charge, I would just want to pause, invite you to questions, comments, any discussion. Or maybe what you heard in the public meeting. I know Dan and Ken, you had a chance to vocalize what you heard or observed.
We did. I'd like to hear what Sarah thinks.
Well, this is definitely a reflection of what I heard. When I went around to the various stations and I read all of the different comments and talked to people, and this is very much a good representation of what I heard and observed.
Okay.
And Ms. Whiteside?
I have a couple of questions. They're not observations. Did you ever ask anybody what they were fishing for? Because the only thing that comes out of that river are crabs.
Lauren, we did have a question on fishing and what are you fishing for? And there was a lot of data, not a consistent message. Can you pull that up and we can look at that maybe while you ask your next question? I don't think we have the answer right away.
Okay, and then why did you choose Portuguese as opposed to Spanish? And further, has there been any input from the Conservation Commission on treading on something that's in the, it's wetlands?
Sure. Well, ours, excuse me, our zoning bylaw doesn't, or sorry, not our zoning bylaw. Our conservation bylaw doesn't restrict Merchants Way the way that it does other areas in town. So they would, from a bylaw perspective, they would have less input than they would anywhere else in town.
But there's, Merchants Way is a road, and the other side of the tracks is marsh and wetland.
Right.
And you're telling me that you have no jurisdiction over that?
No, that, under our bylaw, specifically, we have a 30-foot no activity zone off of resource areas.
Mhm.
That is not the case for this part of Wareham. So from the bylaw perspective, you're not facing any adversity there. I would say a lot of the commission is open to recreation, and this would be a permittable project.
Thank you.
And by the way, Merchants Way is not a roadway, it's a property.
Parking lot, I know. I know it's a park, yeah, I know.
Any other questions, Ms. Whiteside?
No, I just, you know, my observation is that what is coming out of that river is crabs. And people cross in very obvious places all of the time. I know that people below the Narrows Railroad Bridge fish for other things and actually catch them. But what you showed on your study was that the depth of that river is, well, first of all, it's a very narrow channel. And there used to be oyster beds further northeast. I don't know whether they're still there. I know they're not under grants, but that water is not particularly conducive to a lot of other species than crab, in my opinion, at the moment. Goodness, you're even more popular than I am.
So we did in our survey, the online survey, we did ask the question of like, what kind of fishing do you do? What do you catch normally? So these were kind of some of the responses that we got. A lot of striped bass, bluefish, shellfish, saltwater. It was kind of vague.
But you didn't ask the question about what do you catch in the river? That's my point. What is it that we are going to be fishing for when we build a fishing pier into what essentially has 4 acres of muddy flatland type stuff, other than what is currently being fished, which is the crabs, which are the crabs. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're asking a very
sports
site-specific question.
Yeah,
What do you
yes.
fish for here as
Yeah.
opposed to what do you fish for in general?
Yes, exactly.
And so how did we phrase this question? I think it might have been a more general.
What type of fishing would you do?
Yeah.
What'd you do?
You're not gonna catch striped bass.
No.
I disagree.
Really?
And I'll give you the name of a property owner on the river, Chip Wells. He lives across from Perry's Ice Cream, that development in there.
Mhm.
He has a waterfront home and he brags about the record bass that he pulls out of behind his house.
Bass?
Striped bass.
Okay.
There's more record size bass pulled out of the Wareham River from the Narrows south than there are from the Narrows north.
Right,
You
exactly.
know exactly, no, Narrows south being Merchants Way, Narrows north being Warren's Harborside.
The bigger fish are on the
The fish
area we're
are
talking
in the
about?
river, they're not where the boats are.
Oh, okay.
That's what I heard a lot this year too, that the Wareham River was
I,
pretty
I'm not a
active.
fisherman, but I can tell you that this kid Chip Wells that owns, I was gonna say, what the heck is that? I would almost tell you his address, but he's got a kid in the Wareham school system. He bought the house because he knew he could catch fish.
But his house is up on the pond.
Pardon me?
His house is up on the pond,
What do you call pond?
above the dam at Tremont Nail.
Incorrect.
Okay, so where is his house between
If you,
Tremont Nail and the Narrows?
the heck is the name of it? Wait a minute, I'll tell you his.
Mayflower Ridge.
No, not if it's
No.
across from Perry's. There's a whole subdevelopment across Cranberry Highway from Perry's going
Right.
towards the water.
Oh, where Meadowlark Lane is?
Meadowlark Lane,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't, yeah.
Yeah.
That's where he lives.
Okay, so between Tremont and the Narrows is what you're telling me, there is other activity other than crabs?
That, behind Merchants Way and heading up towards the sewer treatment plant.
Yeah.
Is loaded with bass. They chase the schoolies up in there.
Yeah.
The bluefish chase the schoolies up in there. He catches herring up there, has a live bait box, and then sells it as bait fish to the guys that come down and pay big. He has a charter fishing service where he takes his boat and takes people and charges them, you know, you gotta rent me my boat and you gotta have at least 8 guys or something. Yeah, there's
Okay.
fish in there.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not a fisherman, but
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Good feedback.
and then the Portuguese people are out there getting some kind of thing that they eat. You know, they eat the whole thing, bones, head, guts. I don't know what that is either. They take a jackknife and clean it and eat it right there.
So it's a good question. Anecdotally, when we've been on site, we've observed people with fishing poles fishing. Beyond that, we don't know what they were fishing, but we have the data that Lauren shared.
Okay.
Any other questions or thoughts? Ken, anything?
No.
You good?
Regarding the language,
Mhm.
Portuguese versus Spanish, we were advised at the beginning of this project that there's a large Portuguese-speaking population, and that there are some identified environmental justice communities that correlate with that. And so it may be that there's a sizable Spanish population as well, and it would benefit to do a third language, but that's why we picked the language that we did at the outset.
You were misinformed. There's
Okay.
a large Portuguese community, but they've been here for 3, 4, and 5 generations. They speak better English than a whole lot of people I can think of. And Spanish, I think, at this point might be not worth your while to investigate.
Okay.
Yes, we are an environmental justice community, but Portuguese is not spoken here.
Very good.
Okay, Sean. What else, Sean?
Well, we just wanted to give you a picture of where we're headed next in this process. We've outlined some steps here, and I can give you an update. We've had, as Ken and Dan know, we've had some resistance on the DOT front, but we've tapped our internal resources of our internal transportation group and their connections with people at the DOT and Mass Coastal to see if we can advance that conversation. So we're reaching out to connections that we have, and I know that Ken, you've spoken about other stakeholders in town possibly doing the same thing, so we can get DOT back to the table. That's number one. Number two, relative to the comments on the Conservation Commission, I think this update will be appreciated. We are having someone go out this week, weather permitting, to do a more site-specific delineation of the wetland resources on the site to inform the actual layout of the improvements, and to prepare the data that we need to have some pre-permitting discussions with state and state agencies, but also we can also review the Conservation Commission, you know, the findings of what we're uncovering in the field, so that we can also take in account any comments from that commission of this municipality. Our intent is to take that, make a permitting pathways analysis, essentially identifying all the different agencies that will have jurisdiction over this project as a result of these resources and other things. And then once we establish that, we'll be meeting to do pre-permitting reviews of the concept plans with them to get their feedback. We also will be meeting with the consultants who are performing the Merchants Way parking study. That I understand Ken is putting that into action so we can make sure our efforts are coordinated there.
I thought we weren't doing that. I'm sorry, I thought we weren't updating the parking study. I thought we were using the one that was circulated.
I think GAF is, Derek asked GAF to add that aspect to the dumpster consolidation study they're doing along Merchants Way.
So not only are they looking at Merchants Way and making it one way and consolidating the dumpsters, they're looking at parking as well, is that correct?
Not all the parking, just the parking on Merchants Way.
We need to be very specific here, gentlemen and ladies. It's not a parking study. It's a parking study on a site-specific area, which is somewhat town property, bordered by the railroad and somewhat backed up to, that buildings that sit there have property out back of their buildings onto Merchants Way. The 318 public spaces, the 69 near the railroad tracks, that's interesting information. But what you really, in my opinion, need to be looking at is if GAF is counting spaces on Merchants Way, that's not a parking study.
Well, it's called the Merchants Way study. Because that's what they're looking at. That was what I gathered.
And that includes parking.
Right, but
Includes impact on parking.
it includes impact on parking on that specific area. It's not a parking study. We went over this
That's right.
3 or 4 months ago, that the parking study that is dated 2014 is one that we are using. Just saying.
Sean, kind of jumping off from Ms. Whiteside's comment, I found interesting in your presentation that discussion that we've re-envisioned basically Merchants Way, not so much as what it is today, a big expanse of asphalt and the backs of storefronts and dumpsters and that sort of thing. But you presented a rendition that looked much more inviting, more like a park, much more pedestrian friendly. And that would have impact on parking. We would have to give up parking to do that. As you develop that concept, would you be able to identify what you think the impact on parking along Merchants Way would look like?
Yes, we can do that.
They don't need to. GAF is doing that.
Well, GAF is doing some aspect of, that's why they want to
Right.
coordinate with GAF.
Right, but GAF is being paid specifically to look at the parking on Merchants Way, so that would be duplicate effort.
Not really, no, because that GAF is not looking at turning it into a pedestrian plaza. GAF is looking at dumpster consolidation.
So to be very precise about this area is out of scope for us in terms of what the project is. What we're doing is sort of reaching outside the bounds. We were unaware at the time of presenting this idea that there was another consultant working. And so that's why we are asking for a meeting with them before we don't want to take this further. We want to understand what they're doing in their efforts and coordinate. At a minimum, we want to help them understand the importance that whatever they're doing, they need to center around the pedestrian and et cetera. So it's interrelated. I'll say this, it's interrelated to the success of the project that we're talking about. And so that's why we're volunteering to have this coordination back and forth, because we think that there's better product in the end for the town. But it's certainly in the other consultant's scope to, resolve the things that we gave an idea about.
And I think we'll be synthesizing what we hear from you and from GAF Engineering, but all the more reason that it's a good initiative on your part, Sean, to reach out to them and figure out what they're doing so you can coordinate your efforts.
That meeting invite was actually sent out this morning. I sent out a meeting invite between GAF and
okay, good.
Halverson this morning.
Oh, great.
So
Oh, okay.
we're gonna set that
Great.
up.
Perfect, thank you, Josh.
You mind if I interject something?
Jump in, Jim.
There's not a building along Merchants Way that is incentivized by the town of Wareham to improve itself, particularly more than 50% of the current value of the current structure, not counting the value of the land. Should any property owner along Merchants Way miraculously decide to renovate and spend more than 51% of the value of the structure, they'd be required to put the bottom of their first floor out of the floodplain. So when you think about it, if you want to fix downtown Wareham, your plans ought to include every building down there going up on stilts. You draw a plaza, you make it very attractive. Anybody improves their building, they're going on stilts. And they just ruined your whole project. Or they just changed it.
They changed it.
So that should be part of what you're talking about.
There was at one point an outreach from Derek and I believe WRA, which offered incentives to property owners to improve their facades. And nobody bought in, not one.
No,
So,
I'm aware,
yeah, okay,
I'm aware.
I'm sure you are.
And because if I don't own any of the property down there, but if I'm an owner down there and you tell me, hey, we're gonna give you money to make your building look and be worth more, then that means 50% of more, just it's anti-development. You're creating a situation where you're encouraging the property owners not to improve their property. Because if the more it's worth, the less they can spend.
Actually, the more they can spend.
Well, the more they can spend, I understand, but what's it gonna cost? If you pick up, let's take Wareham National Bank and put it 17 feet in the air. What do you think that project's gonna cost? And do you think TD Bank cares about spending that kind of money on a bank that they maintain simply to have a drive-through across the street? And the same thing goes for the old Deacon's building, and I can name every building down there. And there's not an investor on that side of the road that is gonna spend the kind of money that you're trying to encourage.
I'm not related to Mr. Yakabachi in any manner, shape, or form, but it's clear that he and I share the same concerns.
It's, you know, I mean, if you want it, I just want, I mean, you're paying money for a study and, you know, it's like building a 300-seat restaurant and getting occupancy for 109 seats.
Jim, thanks. Thank you for the input.
Pardon me?
Sean, anything else?
So in conjunction with those tasks, we'll be updating the concept design based on the feedback, and at the end we'll be doing a costing analysis, understanding the order of magnitude cost of what these recreational amenities cost, and compiling into a report. All of that will be completed by that June date that we talked about for the purpose of this grant. That report will also include grant opportunities. We're doing additional research on that. We want this to be a implementable roadmap for the town and not just a study. So permitting, grants, things of that nature will be incorporated in terms of next steps following this engagement from us.
Sean, Lauren, thank you very much for a terrific presentation, for the work you've done to date, for an excellent public engagement on the 18th of November. I thought that was a great event. I had several questions I was going to ask you, but you answered them during your presentation. I would ask, is it okay if we post what you just presented to us, this PowerPoint presentation, to the Wareham Redevelopment Authority website?
Yes, we can send it to you following this meeting.
Okay, I think that'd be great to get out to the public to see where we stand currently on this project and to see the work that's gone into it. And my only other comment is that one thing that keeps jumping out at me is that we, even absent realizing what will ultimately be, I think, an inviting vision from Halverson, Ty, and Bond, there are some immediate tangible wins that we're aware of. Just cleaning up the trash, fixing the dumpster situation. Those are things we need to do irregardless of whether we put in a pier or a kayak launch, and we're gonna have to focus some of our efforts, or the town will have to focus effort on that. But Sean, I think what you've presented to us so far is very inviting, very encouraging, it's exciting. And by and large, the feedback I got from people that I saw at the event on the 18th, they were excited about it, found it inspirational, worried about the cost to the town of ongoing maintenance if we actually did build this boardwalk and pier and kayak launch. But I think we're going in the right direction. I think we're being aspirational, which is what we should be. So thank you very much for your work so far.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, nice to meet you.
See you. Take care. We'll sign off then. Have a great day.
Okay, Sean,
Thanks,
take care,
Lauren.
Lauren.
Bye.
And I think we have only a few more minutes, about 9 minutes. Sarah, if you wouldn't mind, would it be okay if we hold off on the updates regarding business improvement districts?
Yep. Mhm.
And the potential for a vacancy tax?
Yep.
Sarah put out some information on that could inform our future ruminations on these issues, or at least the business improvement districts. And Ken, I know you have experience with bids and probably are much more knowledgeable than I am on vacancy tax and whether that's a viable way ahead or
I think that's a good idea, actually.
you do, okay.
Yeah, any incentives to clean up and to restore is a good idea, as far
Okay.
as I'm concerned.
Would you be okay with elaborating on that a little bit at our next meeting?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. We were gonna have a discussion of possible vote on WRA support for a car show in Wareham Village in July or August. I don't think we need to, that's not imminent or
No,
urgent.
no, he needs 5 months to get it done, or he's not gonna do it.
Who's doing it?
Alan.
Oh.
So I can tell you, unless you make a decision today, it isn't gonna happen anyway.
It is or isn't?
It's not.
It's not.
He won't have the time to put it together if you don't say you wanna
Is
do it
there,
now.
is there money involved in that?
He would like some upfront money to be able to prime the pump,
And he also needs
promote it, get some placards for cars,
yeah,
things that they do typically at a car show.
How
but
much?
he also needs I think he needs a 501c3. He needs a sponsor, and
Right.
Oh.
and we apparently can or cannot be. I don't know.
We need somebody we can give the money to allow him
I don't
to
even
put
know.
on the show.
I can't remember. There's a convoluted jump in there, but I know for a fact, because I get told this regularly, if we don't make a decision, we won't have a car show. So
Yeah.
it's up to you.
Yeah, Alan has shared with me some potential dates in July or August. And when we did correspond back and forth regarding that recipient of funds that the WRA would help underwrite this effort, he acknowledged that they need that, but that's all I know. He hasn't identified that sponsor.
There
For
isn't
us.
one at the moment.
So I don't think we can entertain a motion or vote to expend money when we don't know where we're gonna send it. So we'll put that on a future agenda to flesh out some more. Ken, if you could give us your report, Director of Planning?
Just that there was a draft study that came out from Serped on the Route 28 corridor study. It actually originated in Rochester. It was being done for Rochester, but they extended it into Wareham and Middleborough as well too. And I had Serped send the results of the study to the chairman of the select board. So it should be coming your way pretty soon.
I was gonna say, I don't think I've gotten it yet,
Probably not,
and I will share it as soon as I get it.
right. It has a lot of information on demographics in the corridor and traffic and as well as economic development, so it is of interest to us.
So it starts like at the Rochester line,
It
approximately where Serpent is.
Yeah, it goes beyond the Rochester line.
So it goes north of CMAS, I meant.
Yes,
Ken, this is a report or a study that's being done?
it's a report from a study that was being done.
Have you seen the report?
I had a presentation of it last night.
Okay, okay, great. So we'll be able to see that, I guess,
Yeah.
after it gets
Yeah,
to
as
Ms.
soon as I
Whiteside.
get it.
Great. What else, Ken?
That's all for now.
All right, thank you, Ken. Member comments, new initiatives? Ms. Corbett, nothing? Ms. Whiteside, Ken?
No,
And I don't have anything. Correspondence, Ken?
no correspondence.
For attention. Before I go to meeting minutes, we jumped over discussion on WRA 2025, 2026 strategic plan or 2025, 2030 strategic plan. What I'd like to hand out are some, I'll call these working papers. They're not for public consumption. They're for us to ruminate on and think about between now and our next meeting. And I'd like to ask Ken if you could, to help inform our next discussion on strategy, if you could provide the latest accounting, I guess, of Wareham Redevelopment Authority resources, assets, properties, money, so that we have that hard data to chew on. These pieces of paper here that I'm passing out are really meant to be thought-provoking. These aren't finished products. I'll put yours here, Ken. And as we think about what a redevelopment authority is required to do or is authorized to do under Massachusetts general law, these might help us think about those responsibilities. And again, these are drafts, and that's all they are. And we're gonna have to think too about the best way to get our group, our 5 Wareham Redevelopment Authority members together to actually sit down and have some candid discussions about WRA, what we're doing, what we should be doing, what the future holds, what a strategy should look like. And that kind of candor doesn't normally occur during a public meeting, so I don't know the best way to do that. Ms. Whiteside, you may have more experience with this. I know executive sessions are an option.
No, they're not.
Depends,
not?
yeah, on what
It
you,
is not an option.
it's either human resources or personnel or litigation.
Okay. Can we get somebody to sue us so we can, for not having a strategy, so we can have an executive session?
No.
Ken, do you have any ideas? Workshops? I know you've done workshops in the past, but those are public. And to
Yeah.
some degree, again, that could inhibit the kind of honest, straightforward discussion that maybe we need to have as a WRA.
We used a workshop format in when we were developing this strategic plan we have in place now. And that was an invite only workshop.
How does that work? Is that legal under the open meeting law?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
Well, at least we know ahead of time.
So what might our options be? Or are you saying we don't have any options? We have to,
If you want to
we have
deliberate.
to make the sausage in public.
Yeah, if you want to deliberate, you have to have it open to public view.
Okay. All right, then I would ask again that folks, we think about, I just threw this together to give us something to start to think about, to be thought-provoking, to force us to look at some foundational concepts. Ken will provide some facts regarding what our assets are. And we may have to devote an entire meeting just to this.
I
It'll
think
take
that
some
would
time.
absolutely be appropriate.
And then finally, meeting minutes. I sent the meeting minutes out well in advance of today's meeting.
At 11:15 last night?
I didn't see him until this morning. I
didn't see
haven't had a
There
chance
was
to
a
look at
whole
him.
That was 12 hours ahead. No, that was excuse me, 11 hours, no. 10 hours ahead of the meeting today.
Do you have them present with you?
I do.
Then I think it would be appropriate to hand them out, and we need to read them, and we need to get them approved so that we are not criticized for not following the open meeting law.
Right now?
You want to read them right now?
Yeah.
Oops. 10, I got it.
I read them already.
10 read them, okay. And this is for October. This Whiteside. Ken's read that one. And 14 November, and I have two versions of 14 November, and I invite your thoughts on version 2. Here's version 2. Practically fits on a postcard. There you go, Ms. Whiteside. I'll give you a few minutes to read those. I'll be right back.
Of the minutes?
Of what Dan just handed out to you.
I
might come back, yeah, I just wanna go.
Me too.
really think you need to think about handing it to anybody. I've seen them.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I think we have to hold the 14th because there's a list of documents that's not on here.
Okay.
So I'm okay with the other two, but it's up to you. But I think we have to hold the 14th because the two versions are, Mutt and Jeff.
I know, I don't know why we have two versions.
Well,
One was that he had less of a.
yeah, one was, yeah. So,
Just a simpler presentation of the meeting.
yeah,
I know, but then he did a longer presentation of the meeting. Why?
In case the first one didn't work.
And so we're not gonna deal with the 14th.
well, let's do the 10th and the 24th because those are hanging out there and
Yep.
subject to criticism.
Okay. Should we wait for Dan?
Yeah. Can you, Josh, can you let him know we need him to?
My building's not worth 1.5, it's worth 3.2. You know,
10.
all built on the wrong information, I'm getting out of here.
All right, thank you, Jim. Thank you. Okay, has everybody had a chance to review the minutes?
We're gonna vote on 10, 10, and 24, and we're gonna hold the other ones just so we can figure out why there's such a dichotomy in the presentation.
Like why there's two versions?
Well, there's two versions and they're so different, and there's no list of documents onto it, so I'm not comfortable with that one yet.
Okay, so October 10th and October 24th.
Mhm.
Do we hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I so move.
So, second.
Do I hear a
I
second?
see.
Second.
Judith? Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the minutes for October 10th, our meetings on October 10th and October 24th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 4.0. And for November 14th, mention two things. I got a,
No, not November 14th, October 24th.
Well, we did those together.
Oh, we did them together, all
Yeah.
right, okay, all right.
regarding the November 14th minutes, a couple of comments. One, Judith, thank you for your first draft of the November 14th minutes. That's what the longer version is based on. And recognizing that we now have best evidence of what occurs at our meetings, which is a digital representation provided to the town and to the public by Wareham Media. The second version would simply direct people to where they need to go. There were no documents that were actually used in that meeting, so I left them off. And so that's the reason why there's a concise example for us to think about for the future. This is certainly quick and easy to put together, put out, and then it directs people right to the best evidence. The 2 hours worth of meeting that's available on Wareham Media YouTube channel.
The official record is what we submit, and if we're submitting the written minutes, that's the sum total of the meeting. And the recorded video doesn't count
Oh, okay.
Right.
Thank you.
as a legal document. So,
Unless somebody wants to know what really happened at the meeting.
yeah, they can always go back and look for their own edification, but the legal document is what we approve as the minutes of the meeting,
That's
whether
correct.
it's the electronic version or the written text.
Right.
And what we've been doing is the written text.
Right.
Because not everybody has the availability to go, or the patience to go and watch the YouTube. Because the minutes are meant to be a highlight of what was discussed.
So I would
The-
say one version here is a highlight, which you crafted, and we very much appreciate your work on that. This one here is an Olympus level highlight that says the meeting occurred, it started at such and such a time, it adjourned at such and such a time, and there were no votes taken. There was no official action really taken by the WRA, but if you want to sit in on the discussion, we have a website that you can go to, Wareham Media YouTube channel. So the argument would be, this is ample for a legal document, and anybody that really wants to know what occurred, if they may want to challenge us, sue the town, they're not going to use this or the longer version of the minutes. They're not going to rely on that. They are going to go to the video. They're going to say, take me to the tape and go look at the Wareham Media.
Well, the legal version is only the written one that we vote on.
And that we submit to the clerk, and she stamps the clerk stamps it in and records it.
Right.
We cannot count on WCTV. They are not our official record keeper. They are an amenity that we pay for, but they are not.
They're a partner.
They're a partner, and if the
contracted
tape
with.
breaks or you don't have YouTube, it's not available to the public.
So this is the better legal record, and there were no documents
Correct.
used, so we can approve, I think we should approve the longer version.
I hear a motion to approve the longer version of the November 14th meeting minutes. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. It's unanimous. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I
So
moved.
moved.
Okay,
There
second.
were three of us.
I think Ken beat you. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The meeting is adjourned at
11:10.
11:10. John, thank you very much.